I want you, the listener, to imagine something for a second. Imagine a continent that holds, well, basically the absolute keys to the future.
Right, we're talking boundless minerals right beneath the soil, an exploding youthful population, and, centuries of really rich, complex culture.
Exactly. Now imagine if that entire landmass suddenly made this radical decision. Like imagine if they just stopped looking outward for salvation.
Oh, wow, yeah, just total pivot.
Right. No more waiting for foreign investment to dictate the terms. No more relying on outside expertise or, external validation to fix internal problems. Imagine a collective pivot toward building together, strictly from within.
I mean, the sheer unadulterated power that would unlock it's staggering to think about.
It really is. And that power, that potential, is the engine of what we're unpacking today. The Blueprint for Collective African Prosperity.
Which is such a powerful title.
It is. And the text takes a lot of inspiration from a figure noted in the writing as the Almighty Dread, the Son of Africa.
Right.
And the core argument here, it completely upends the way we usually think about progress. Because it makes the case that Africa's greatest breakthrough isn't going to come from isolated moments of brilliance,
Yeah, it's not about a few standalone mega successes.
Exactly. It demands this radical, uncompromising commitment to teamwork, collaboration, and collective purpose.
Which honestly is a direct challenge to the whole myth of the lone genius. I mean, that myth dominates so much of our modern global economic thinking.
Oh, totally. We love the narrative of the singular visionary changing the world in a garage.
Exactly. But the Blueprint argues that celebrating isolated billionaires or a single successful tech startup that doesn't actually lift a continent.
Right, it just creates these tiny islands of wealth in a sea of struggle.
Yes, true. Systemic wealth, the kind that actually builds nations, is never the result of one person. It's the result of intricate collaborative networks.
So to understand why that collaboration is just so urgent, we really need to look at the jarring contrast the Blueprint highlights. I mean, on one hand, you have an inventory of riches that is almost hard to wrap your head around.
It's massive.
Yeah. The text lists talent, natural resources, immense creativity, deep intelligence, arable land, minerals, and this unparalleled youthful demographic.
And then on the other hand, you have the reality of how all that potential is squandered.
Right. It points directly to things like separation, jealousy, corruption, a total lack of coordination, ego, tribalism, and just division in general.
It's basically diagnosing the friction in the system.
Yes, the friction. It paints a picture of a system that is broken, not because it lacks parts, but because the parts just refuse to connect. I was thinking about this, and it's kind of like an automobile assembly line.
Yeah.
Imagine you have this massive factory floor. Over in one corner, you have a team building a state-of-the-art engine.
Okay, I like this.
And in another corner, a team is forging this beautiful aerodynamic chassis. Somewhere else, they're making the absolute best tires in the world.
Right, all top-tier components.
Exactly. But the engine builders refuse to speak to the chassis builders because, I don't know, maybe they speak a different language or belong to a different ethnic group. Or maybe simply because their ego dictates that the engine is the only important part.
So they just don't cooperate.
Right. So instead of a world-class luxury car rolling off the line, you just end up with a warehouse full of dusky, expensive car parts.
And the parts themselves are flawless. It's the mechanism to assemble them that's failing.
Yeah.
And that's exactly why the Blueprint diagnoses internal friction as the primary barrier. It's why there's this specific, urgent call-out to stop waiting for outsiders to solve our problem.
Because an outsider can't fix that.
Exactly. If the barrier is internal division, no amount of external aid or foreign intervention can fix it. An outside investor can bring capital, sure, but they cannot manufacture internal trust.
But that brings up a massive operational question, though. The text heavily blames ego and tribalism for this waste. But, I mean, is it just a character flaw? Is it just ego?
What do you mean?
Well, if you look at the reality on the ground, we're talking 54 countries, thousands of languages, incredibly diverse historical contexts. Building trust across those populations seems inherently monumental.
It is monumental.
Right. If you're listening to this and you've ever tried to manage a diverse team of just 10 people, You know how hard it is to get everyone rowing in the same direction?
Yeah.
How do you get 1 billion people to do it?
Well, you don't do it by appealing purely to morality. You do it by fundamentally reframing what unity actually is.
Okay, unpack that a bit.
The blueprint doesn't frame unity as this nice, warm, abstract ideal. It's not about holding hands around a campfire. It frames unity as a strict, non-negotiable economic necessity.
It's about the bottom line.
Exactly. Ego and tribalism aren't just social issues in this text. They are literal economic bottlenecks. They artificially shrink your market.
Because if you only trade and build with people within your specific tribe or border, you hit a ceiling almost immediately.
Precisely. Your potential for scale is severely capped. Overcoming that tribalism is about unlocking economies of scale. The strongest economies in the world, historically, are built on vast, low-friction networks of trust.
Right, where people are cooperating and sharing knowledge?
Yes. When a farmer in one region can seamlessly trust a logistics network in another region to move their goods to a market in a third region, that's when generational wealth is generated.
So division is actively destroying the networks required for a modern economy to even function.
Exactly. So building that trust is difficult, sure, but the text argues it is the only bridge to actual power.
Which means we need to look at the blueprint's actual architecture for building that bridge. Because it moves from this high-level abstract necessity of getting along to a highly practical strategy.
The alchemy of collaboration.
Yes, it's all about cross-pollinating specific professional skills. I mean, the core thesis is stated flatly, collaboration is power.
And this is where the manifesto moves from theory to actual engineering. It lists very specific collaborative pairings designed to create an integrated economy.
Let's break those down because they are incredibly deliberate. The blueprint envisions engineers working with scientists, farmers working with technologists,
Artists collaborating with entrepreneurs.
right, teachers building with innovators, and quite uniquely, communities pairing with honest leadership.
It really celebrates the diversity of individual mastery, doesn't it?
It does. It highlights that one African knows machines, another understands agriculture, another masters finance, and another inspires the culture through music or education.
And the intended outcome of this unity isn't just a feel-good moment. It's about creating industries, creating jobs, sparking innovation, and achieving true economic independence.
Getting away from that destructive competition.
Exactly. The goal of combining these specific skills is to create a new economic compound. It's like take iron and carbon. On their own, they have utility, right? But when you subject them to heat and combine them, you don't just get a mixture of iron and carbon.
You get steel.
You get steel. You get something fundamentally stronger and more resilient than its constituent parts.
I love that. It reminds me of a giant potluck. You know, if everyone just brings rice, it's a really boring meal.
Very boring.
But when you mix the engineers' ingredients with the farmers and the artists, you get a feast. But, okay, how does that steel actually get forged in a modern economy? Let's take the farmer and the technologist pairing. What does that cross-pollination look like on the ground?
Let's play that out. A traditional farmer has deep generational knowledge of the soil, the local climate, the crops.
Right.
But working alone, they're vulnerable. They face unpredictable weather, inefficient supply chains, crop disease. Their output is physically limited by their own labor.
And then you introduce a technologist.
Exactly. The technologists might not know how to plant a single seed, but they know how to build localized predictive weather models using cheap sensors.
Oh.
They can design automated, solar-powered drip irrigation systems using recycled local parts. They can code a simple SMS-based marketplace that connects that farmer directly to buyers.
Which cuts out the middleman completely.
Right.
So the farmer's yield triples and the spoilage drops to zero.
And that creates a surplus. Because the farmer is now generating a surplus, they have disposable income to invest in the technologist's next innovation.
Oh, I see where this is going.
Right. The technologist now has the capital to hire the engineer to build a domestic manufacturing facility for those irrigation systems. The engineer hires local labor. The entire local economy levels up.
So the outputs of one sector literally become the inputs for another.
Exactly. They move away from the zero-sum game of fighting over a small slice of the pie and instead build systems that continually expand the pie itself.
That integrated ecosystem makes total sense. But, you know, there's one pairing in that list that really stood out to me.
Which one?
It pairs communities with honest leadership, right alongside the farmers and technologists. That implies the text treats honest leadership as a functional, required skill for this societal machine to work, not just a political status.
Yeah, it treats leadership as an operating system.
Exactly. If the community and the natural resources are the raw hardware, honest leadership is the software that allows it all to communicate.
That's a great way to put it.
Because if you have corrupt leadership, it's like a computer virus.
Mhm.
The farmer and the technologist might generate that incredible surplus we just talked about, but a corrupt system siphons that surplus out of the community before it can ever reach the engineer.
Right. The gears just grind to a halt.
Yeah. Honest leadership provides the zero-friction environment where trust can actually be monetized and scaled.
Because without that ethical operating system, the technological and agricultural advancements just create more efficient ways for a small elite to extract wealth. The system must be designed, fundamentally, to uplift everyone.
So we have the immense resources. We understand the strategy of cross-pollinating these diverse skills. And we know honest leadership is the required operating system.
Right.
But starting this kind of massive continent-wide integration is one thing. Sustaining it across decades is another entirely. How do you keep the system running once the initial excitement fades?
Well, the blueprint argues that you cannot sustain this mechanically if you don't sustain it psychologically.
A generational shift.
Exactly. It requires a fundamental intergenerational rewiring of the collective mindset. Specifically, it calls for a radical shift from survival thinking to systems thinking.
The text is very pointed about this. It stresses the urgent need to move beyond mere survival and to begin building with a long-term vision.
Because it states that no nation becomes powerful without organization, discipline, and teamwork.
And it places a massive, uncompromising mandate on how the next generation is educated. It says we must teach our children cooperation instead of division, production instead of dependency, and creation instead of consumption.
Those three shifts are the psychological bedrock of the entire manifesto. And the shift from dependency to production is particularly vital.
Let's dig into that word dependency, because, it usually conjures up images of relying on foreign aid or charity. But in this context, it seems to mean something much deeper regarding global trade.
Yeah, dependency, in the economic sense the text implies, is the mindset of exporting raw materials and importing finished goods.
Like digging raw cocoa out of the ground, selling it for pennies, and then buying back Swiss chocolate at a premium.
Exactly. Or exporting crude oil and importing refined gasoline. The mechanism of poverty is built right into that exchange rate.
Wow, yeah.
The shift to production means keeping the value add within the continent. The engineer, the scientist, and the entrepreneur work together to build the refineries and the chocolate factories at home.
And when that shift happens, the blueprint promises very tangible physical outcomes. It moves past theory and says that this mindset shift will produce flourishing roads, clean cities, factories, research centers.
Technology hubs, schools, farms.
Yeah, massive renewable energy systems and thriving creative industries. The ultimate vision is staggering. It pictures Africa becoming one of the greatest forces of innovation, culture, business, and human advancement the world has ever seen.
It's a total societal transformation driven entirely from within.
But hold on, let me push back a little here. Let's look at the reality of asking people to make this shift. I really want to challenge the practicality of transitioning from survival thinking to long-term vision.
Okay, let's hear it.
How do you ask a family living in intense economic insecurity to focus on a 10-year plan for a regional technology hub? I mean, when you are just trying to feed your children today, thinking about long-term systems feels like a luxury of the comfortable.
It does.
The blueprint seems to demand that people unify and build systems before their immediate needs are met. Is it actually realistic to ask a starving person to focus on architecture instead of a meal?
It is the most difficult ask a society can make of its people. I mean, the tension you're pointing out is the crucible where nations either forge themselves or fracture.
Because survival mode forces extreme short-term thinking.
Yes. It creates a localized, zero-sum game where you are actively competing with your neighbor for immediate, scarce resources. It's exhausting, and it keeps you trapped.
Because all your energy is spent just treading water.
Exactly. But the logic of the blueprint is that strategic collaboration isn't a luxury reserved for those who are already comfortable. It is the literal engine out of survival mode.
Wait, really? How so?
Well, think about it. If 10 people are individually trying to survive, they are burning massive amounts of energy competing with each other. But if those same 10 people pool their meager resources, if the farmer, the builder, and the teacher coordinate their efforts, they create a small, localized surplus.
Oh, I see. So you don't build the continent-wide tech hub on day one. You pool resources to buy one communal tractor.
Yes. And that single tractor generates enough surplus crop to buy you breathing room for month 2. That breathing room allows you to plan for year 1. The blueprint is insisting that Africa does not lack the intelligence or the resources to survive. It lacks the organized mechanism to utilize them efficiently. Unity isn't what you do after you escape survival mode. Unity is the escape velocity itself.
That is so profound. You don't wait to be comfortable to collaborate. You collaborate to become comfortable.
Yeah,
That flips the entire script on how we view hardship.
it really does.
It suggests that the division, the ego, and the tribalism aren't just the sad results of hard times. They are the active mechanisms keeping times hard.
And this brings us right back to that educational mandate we discussed. If a society does not actively teach the next generation how to produce, how to create, and how to cooperate,
The children will just default to the survival habits of their parents.
precisely, they will default to dependency and consumption. And the cycle of short-term, zero-sum survival thinking will just repeat itself indefinitely, regardless of how much gold or lithium is sitting under the ground.
So the mindset has to be broken on purpose. It has to be an intentional rewiring of the cultural hard drive.
Exactly.
Wow. As we pull all these threads together, the core message of this deep dive becomes incredibly clear. The blueprint for collective African prosperity is arguing that true lasting prosperity requires abandoning that destructive, inward-facing competition.
Right, the competition that just keeps communities fractured.
Yes, it requires a hard strategic pivot toward cross-disciplinary teamwork to build lasting, resilient systems. It's about taking the mechanic, the farmer, the artist, the technologist, and the honest leader and plugging them into the exact same power grid.
It demands the belief that collective progress is not only possible, but is literally the only pragmatic way forward. I mean, the human capital is there, the natural capital is there.
It is simply waiting for the architecture of trust to organize it.
Exactly. And there is a striking, almost poetic closing thought in the source material that really grounds all of these high-level economic theories.
What is it?
It simply says, why compete? Let's collaborate and eat.
Why compete? Let's collaborate and eat. It synthesizes everything beautifully.
It really does. It takes the abstract concepts of supply chains, value-add manufacturing, and generational wealth, and distills them down to the most fundamental human reality. Everyone needs to eat.
So why spend your energy fighting your neighbor over the crumbs of a broken system when you can combine your skills and build the entire bakery together?
Build the bakery. I love that.
Right. But before we wrap up, I want to leave you, the listener, with a final thought to mull over on your own. The blueprint emphasizes this massive systemic shift from consumption to creation and from dependency to production. If this vision is fully realized, if this generation and the next take this collaborative architecture to heart in Africa, transforms from a fractured exporter of raw materials into a hyper-collaborative creator of finished global industries, how does that fundamentally rewrite the rules and balance of power in the entire global economy?
That's the billion-dollar question.
It is. Imagine that vast garage full of world-class parts finally getting put together by a unified, highly skilled team. When that car finally rolls out of the garage, fully assembled, engine roaring, and hits the global track, the entire race changes. The balance of power in the world shifts overnight. Keep exploring, keep questioning, and think about what systems you can build in your own life.
Thank you for listening. Please like, share, and subscribe. Support the vision and mission. I can see the new Africa, inspired by the almighty dread. All rights reserved. Thank you.